Mode.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our free training call today. This is Barb Bruno, and I'm doing this call as a result of several conferences that I've just addressed. And if there's one common complaint I keep hearing from every owner and manager, it's that, I know my people could produce more. I hear that over and over and over again, that I just know they could produce more. They're not working up to their ability, and could they produce more? Of course they could. I think that every one of us can do more. We can be more successful. We can have more sales and profits. There's always room for improvement. But the truth of the matter is, will they do more? Are they capable of doing more? They might be. But the question is, are they going to do more? As an owner or a manager, it's important for you to bring out the best in the people you supervise. But understand something. Your people are not your greatest assets unless they're the right people. If you've got individuals that have quit and stayed, if you've hired individuals that really don't want to sell, and the quit and stayed person can do more damage in your organization than just about anybody else. You also, when it comes to bringing out the best in people, and again, I repeat what I said, your people are not your greatest assets unless they're the right people, and that starts with your hire. You cannot hire a duck and expect them to perform like an eagle. Now, the person might be a great duck for you, and when I refer to ducks and eagles, a duck could be somebody that does $300,000 a year for you in direct placement, or does $300,000 a year for you in GMP. But they're not going to want to be that $500,000 producer or that $750,000 producer. They're not going to want to be that big biller. And so sometimes your aspirations for the people that work for you are higher than theirs are. And so as an owner or a manager, that's something else you have to consider. You really have to key into what's most important to every single person that works for you so you can manage them properly. The people that you supervise will not attain higher levels of success because you want them to be more successful. And this is a mistake I made for probably the first 10, 15 years I had my business, is I kept wanting more for my people than they wanted for themselves. And then I would get very frustrated as an owner. I would try all kinds of contests. I would give them all kinds of tools. I would do everything possible because I'm thinking, wow, if I give them all these, things to use and all these tools and all these resources, they're going to do better. But it's almost that I wanted them to be more successful than they wanted to be. And I learned, after managing and supervising for almost a decade, that people do not do things for your reasons. They will do things for their own reasons. And I can tell you that I was very guilty often of, especially at the end of the year, I would say, okay, we've got a new year coming. The economy is better. It's a candidate-driven marketplace. We're going to have a record year this next year. And I would go on and on how we were going to have this record year and it was going to be great for all of us. And then what I realized is that many of the people that were working for me almost found this little speech I was giving annoying. And they were saying this is something I was going to do to them, not for them. Like when I said we're going to have a record year, all they were hearing was, oh my gosh, she's going to expect more of us. Like now we're going to have to produce more. Oh my God, what is she going to change? And understand something, as an owner or a manager, you have to embrace change. You cannot do things the same way and expect different results. I laugh because I speak at roughly 25 conventions a year, and yet I attend several a year. And the reason I attend conferences is because my training has to be current. I've never seen change happen so fast. I keep changing my training programs because so much is changing out there. Our business does not even resemble what it was 10 years ago. And as an owner or a manager, you have to keep on top of all the trends and know what changes are coming down the road. I heard Governor Huckabee at a recent conference that I attended, and I think he gave the best example I've ever seen because I'm a very visual person, and I want you to think about this. He went to a governor's conference, and it was basically at Lake Tahoe before they were going to have the winter games there. And the governor basically said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a toboggan contest. Now, Governor Huckabee, being from a southern state, didn't even own a winter jacket, had never even seen a toboggan run. And when they went there and saw, the run, he's like, you're kidding, right? Because those sleds get up to 85, 90 miles an hour. And all he's thinking is he's going to be a headline the next day, governor killed, on a toboggan track. And he said, I learned my best lesson in business and how to be a good business owner and a good manager from an 18-year-old kid. And basically they gave me this 18-year-old boy and said, he's going to train you and he's going to be on the toboggan with you. And he said, I looked at this kid and I knew he was younger than any of my children. He had long hair and piercings and tattoos, and I'm thinking, I'm putting my life in this kid's hands. But listen to the lesson he taught me. He said, as we were in the toboggan, he was saying, by the way, when you see a curve up ahead, the minute you see the curve, you've got to lean into the curve, because by the time we get there, it's too late. We'll fly off the track, and we're going to be going at speeds of 85 or 90 miles an hour. And the minute you get through one curve, you've got to look ahead, and the minute you see another curve, you've got to lean into that curve. And see, as an owner or a manager, that's your job. You know, you have to know what trends are coming down the road. You've got to know what changes to make. And by the time a trend is upon you and you find yourself ill-prepared, or what you find yourself is your competition is going to run right over you because they've been keeping on top of what's going on. Now, when it comes to figuring out, you know, why people will be better, you know, how can you bring out the best in your people? How do you find out what their own reasons are? Because if you ask them, you know, well, what reasons are important to you, they probably won't even know how to communicate those to you. But there's 4 things you can do. Number 1, require that everybody that works for you write down 10 non-negotiable goals. And these are goals in all areas of their life: personal, career, education, philanthropic, spiritual, health, finance, career, everything. Just what are the 10 most important things to each person that works for you? Because if I truly want to do something and you're going to be the vehicle to help me do it, say that I want to send my kids to the best colleges. If you're the vehicle, if this job is the vehicle to let me be able to do that for my children, I may produce more for you because now I'm doing it for somebody I love. But if you just have your people write down goals and they're not posted where they work, I guess I want to ask each one of you on this phone right now, if you walked around your office right now, does every person that works for you have goals that they can see when they're on the phones and they're looking at those goals all day long? And if the goals don't have action items under them, they're never going to attain the goal. Under each goal, they should have 3 to 5 action items. What do they have to do to attain the goal? Break the goal down into 3 to 5 steps and date the steps. And as they're completing the steps, have them highlight them off that list of goals. And if people do things step by step by step, they're going to attain the goal. And if you don't have this done, this is the best thing you could do when you get off this phone, is have a meeting with your people at the end of this week and do it as a group. Have everybody write down what they're trying to attain, because now you know what their reasons are. Now you know what's important to every person that works for you, and now you're going to know where to customize your efforts and where you have to aim, you know, your contests in the way that you're, you know, orchestrating things to help them attain their goals. Number 2 is you've got to manage by numbers. You've got to provide each person with the daily results they need. Otherwise, you're managing by emotion. And I know none of us love reports. None of us necessarily love to keep stats and love to keep numbers. But you have to know numbers and ratios and stats on every single individual that works for you. And if I know, for instance, if I'm only working the recruiting side of the business, and I know I have to interview 3 new people a day, that means I have to book at least 4 people a day because somebody's going to no-show. And whether I'm interviewing them on the phone or interviewing them face-to-face, if my number is 3 a day, and say yesterday was Monday and I only interviewed 2, then today I have to interview 4. Because at the end of the week, I know that if I interview 15 people, according to my numbers, I'm going to have enough candidates to send out on our openings, or I'm going to consistently hit our goals. See, it's not about the numbers of the phone calls. Everybody focuses on the numbers of calls rather than the results that each person needs. I always have owners ask me, Barb, how many calls do your people make a day? It depends on their abilities. It depends on their ratios and stats. You know, if I've got somebody on the client development side and they know they have to write 3 orders a week with interviewing times and a target date to fill, then how many marketing presentations do they have to make? I don't know. They have to make however many they have to make to write 3 new orders every week. It's the same on the recruiting side. If they've got to interview 3 people a day, I don't know how many calls they have to make, but they have to make enough where they book at least 4 people a day, so they're allowing for somebody no-showing. You know, you've got to know the numbers. As an owner or manager, you've got to know your numbers if you're working a desk, and you absolutely have to know everybody's numbers and ratios that work for you. And that's why on our daily planner, you know, we keep ratios and we keep stats, because we want to know that not only daily, but we want to know it month to date, year to date, to see if our people are on track. When you manage by numbers, it eliminates slumps. It eliminates that roller coaster that so many owners feel that they're on. You also need to conduct a weekly review. And a weekly review is something that I've taught in many training sessions to my clients. And the reason I talk about a weekly review is then you never have a bad month. You might have a bad week, but you're never going to have a bad month. At the end of every week, you as the owner want every person that works for you to ask themselves 3 questions. What did I do right this week? What's the 20% that gave me 80% of my production because I want to do more of that next week? Where did I waste my time this week? And you want them to stop doing those things immediately. And time wasters are all the time they spend on the candidates they're never going to place. As a company, you probably place 5 out of every 100 people that come to you. And you know what your recruiters are doing? They're spending a lot of time on the other 95%, giving free consulting, free advice, because it's easier to do that than pick up the phone and call somebody new. The third question they're going to ask themselves is, what new idea can I implement? They've got to constantly be making subtle changes. See, everybody that works for you is on automatic pilot right now. They come in, they have the same habits day in, day out, day in, day out. And it's only, if you shake things up and teach them new ways of doing things, are they ever going to produce more? And again, they'll produce for their own reasons, but they've got to think every week, what new thing am I going to try next week, that I didn't do this past week that'll help me hit my goals? Once you have this done as an owner or a manager, you can customize context to help them achieve the goals they set. I meet owners all the time that are very frustrated because they put thousands of dollars on the table that their recruiters can earn, and nobody wins the contest, or the same people win it all the time. If you focus on your contest, on helping them achieve their goals, sometimes it's just time off. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's it's food or being able to go somewhere or do something. If your contests focus on something that's important to the people that work for you, that's when they're going to attain them. And again, they're going to attain them for their own reasons. If the contest is too long, takes too much time, is too confusing, chances are nobody's going to even participate. Now, I want to go into 12 rules for bringing out the best in people. The reason I started with this part of the program first is, first you've got to look at the people that work for you. And, owner to owner, if you've got people that are not hitting their goals and they're costing you money, you cannot afford to have them work for you. And the other people that work for you are wondering why you're not doing something about it. You have to hold your team accountable. You've got to hire right, and then basically know that you've got the right people on your team. Once you know that, then you figure out what their own reasons are, what's most important to them, and now you've got the solution to having basically people perform at their best. And now we're going to basically go into 12 rules that will also help you bring out the best in your people. Rule number 1 is you have to make sure that your people understand expectations. It's interesting because I have a lot of people say, well, they're just not working up to their potential. I expect so much more. And I'll ask owners, well, what do you expect? Or I'll ask managers, what do you expect of the people that work for you? Well, I expect them to do more than they're doing. Well, what exactly do you expect from them? Do they have expectations in writing? When you hire somebody, you should have expectations in writing, what they can expect from you as their owner or manager and what you expect from them. This is something that has to be in writing, because, again, if people don't know what you expect, how are they ever going to live up to your expectations? That's one of the things that I even put that in our training programs. We give them a list of our expectations and let people customize the list, because if you're not telling people what you expect, they have no idea. They have no idea if they're doing average, if they're doing great, if they're doing okay. They've got to know exactly what's expected. And that's level of performance as well as production. And just a side note here, what I've been training my training clients on recently is you've also got to give written expectations to your clients and candidates, because they're very confused. If I go to somebody's office in Connecticut, for instance, they might operate very differently than if I go into an office that's in LA. We're very different. We've all customized our offices, and candidates and clients are confused. And, you've got to provide a list. This is what you can expect from us. This is what we need from you to find top talent. Or this is what we need from you to find you your dream job. You don't want to say this is what we expect from you to the clients and candidates, but this is what we need from you in order to do a great job for you. Expectations have to be put in writing. Can you imagine in any relationship you have in your life, whether it's with your spouse, your partner, your children, wouldn't it be great if you could just write down expectations where everybody knew what was expected and everybody agreed on it? It would just solve a lot of problems up front. But again, Your people have to know what you expect. You've got to put it in writing, and you've got to discuss it. They've got to realize that you don't have an open door policy, that you're not going to breathe their brain. You know, if they've got a question, they need to come with you with a question and their solution, and then you're going to let them know if you agree or disagree. You know, those are the kinds of things you want to list on the list of expectations. Rule number 2 is you've got to identify the greatest talents of your team. And I can tell you that most firms are splitting up the placement process. Most firms do not have recruiters working a full desk. Now, some firms still do, because there are some talented people out there that can work both sides of the sale, that are just as good on the client side as they are on the recruiting side. But often you've got somebody that's great at client development, they're great at client relationships, but they're not that good at recruiting. And so most owners are looking at that right now. Okay, what's the 20% of this person's talent that is giving us 80% of our results? And where can I take advantage of them? And it doesn't make any difference if you're, doing recruiting on direct placement, or if you're doing temporary or contract placements. Whether you've got inside salespeople, outside salespeople, what are their greatest strengths? And you've got to help them identify their greatest strengths. As their owner or manager, you have to help people, and there's a process you can use to help people identify their greatest talents. And you want them to spend most of their time using their greatest talents. There is so much time wasted throughout the day. Let me give you an example. If you don't have an email policy, they're probably answering emails as they're coming in, as they're appearing on the bottom right of their monitor. And you know what? Emails are usually not their priorities. They're everybody else's priorities. But it's real easy to click on that email rather than picking up the phone and calling somebody. If you don't have an email policy, that's just one little example of how to get people focused on what they should be doing versus the habits that they formed. If it's a habit to answer emails all day long, I'm telling you, if you establish an email policy, you can have them focused on their greatest talents, and you'll put an hour to 90 minutes back in the day of your recruiters. And so this is critical, that you identify the best talents of everybody that works for you. And by the way, that goes for you too as the owner or manager. Where are you the strongest? I firmly believe that owners and managers should always be involved in client development, and you should have relationships with all your key accounts. So if you ever lose a recruiter, you don't lose the client. You should have relationships with every key account in your business. Rule number 3 is there have to be consistent standards. Those goals aren't real, that I'm not really being held accountable. This is probably a question I get from my training clients more than anything else is, Barb, how do we set minimum standards? What kind of minimum standards should I have for my exact business? And once I really understand somebody's business and their business model and their niches and their level of responsibility, I can give them answers. But you have got to set minimum standards. And if minimum standards aren't met, what are the consequences? And I guess I want to ask you another question. I want you to go back to January 1st of this year. I'm basically giving this presentation at the beginning of May. So you've had January through April, 4 months. If people didn't hit their goals in the first 4 months of this year, what happened to them? Because if you erased them, you don't have a standard of excellence in your business. The message you sent to everybody that worked for you was, you know what, you set those goals, you didn't hit them, it's okay, let's do better this next month. The best thing you could do for your people right now, the best thing you could do for them is basically take the amount, the difference between what they set as their goal and what they said they were, what they actually produced, and then you've got 8 months left in the year. And what you do is you take that total and you divide it by 8 and you add it to the 8 remaining months of the year. Because if you don't do that, you really don't have any kind of standards in your business. And how can you hold me accountable? If I work for you, how can you expect me to do better? And how can I feel like I'm going to be held accountable if, in fact, you just erased the goals and you didn't add them on to future months? Because what you've told me is it's okay not to hit my goal. Now, if I work for you and I'm a high achiever and I'm hitting my goal every single month, I'm also wondering why you're not holding other people, my coworkers, accountable. Why are they being allowed to still work here if I'm hitting my goals, but they're not, and we're treated the same way? Again, there has to be a standard of excellence if you want to bring out the best in your people. Rule number 4, and by the way, this also helps you retain your high achievers. They're not going to stay if they don't see other people are being held accountable. Rule number 4 is your people have to realize that failure is not fatal. Failure should be viewed as an opportunity to grow and learn. And a fear of failure, if your people are afraid to fail, they're afraid of the consequences of failing at something, like they don't want to make a decision, that will definitely limit their success. And I have to share something with you. Most of the successful people I know, people that are truly, really successful, whether they're in our profession or in any other profession, those people have had a ton of failures. And the reason they're successful is because they're judged by how they overcome their failures, not their number of successes. And what I learned over the years, in fact, this is what I teach all the time, is that I used to think that the best way to learn was by failures. And what I've learned now is, you know what, there's a better way to learn, and that's by watching other people's failures. And so if somebody else has made a mistake in your organization, or if you have, make it a teaching moment. Make it a teaching moment where not only the person who had the failure learns, but everybody in your organization learns from this. It was a learning experience for everybody in your company, including you as the owner. But you don't want, failure to be fatal. You don't want people to be afraid to try things. Rule number 5 is you want to teach your people to emulate success. I always tell, rookies and new hires, you want to mirror the business that the top producers are working. Like, watch the orders they're working. Watch the temp assignments they're working or the contracts they're working, because they know what business is the best business. And as an owner, by the way, every one of you should do revenue modeling, and every one of you, should know your best business. If you haven't done revenue modeling and you don't know your best business, then your marketing people are out there just writing whatever comes in versus writing the business that really represents your best business, your high margin business, that job that comes in that you're going to fill. It always amazes me when I'm at conventions. I'll ask recruiters in the audience, if an order came in today, what order could come in right now that you would fill it? It's what you do. You've got people in your database, and whether it's a contract, temp assignment, or a full-time job, if that order comes in, you're going to fill it. And every one of them know what it is. And then I ask them, what percentage does that kind of business represent the business you've written so far this year? And it's always under 10%. Imagine if you would identify your best business, actually conduct revenue modeling where you could give guidance to the people that are working for you. Because your new rookies need to know what to work. Now, I always tell people, especially new rookies, don't mirror the work habits of the big billers or the top producers. Because, once you learn how to do this, you know who to call and how to call, you don't make as many calls. So the new people have to understand they have to make 5 times the calls they see the top producers and big billers making, because, again, they know who to call and how to call. So they have to realize they have to watch the business they're writing, but not necessarily emulate their habits. And I want to make one more statement here, because this was told to me a few years back, and when I heard this at a wealth building conference, I thought, wow, is that a rude piece of advice? But I've come to realize how true this is. The fastest way for somebody to get from where they are now to where they want to be is to change the 5 people they hang around with most. You've got to hang around with people that are more successful than you, that are better than you. And this doesn't include your family members, your kids, your spouse, your immediate family. Because when I first heard that, I thought, wow, I hang around with my husband and my kids. I mean, do I have to change them? And they're like, no. Think of your friends. If you're the teacher, if you're making more than all of your friends, you got to find some other people to hang around with that are more successful than you. Because, when you hang around with successful people, you can't help but learn from them. And this doesn't have to be people in our profession. Who's the most successful real estate person in your community? The banker. Teach your recruiters to do this. Go out and find people that are very successful, because you learn from them, and they don't have to be in our business. It's no coincidence that successful people, belong to the same clubs and go on the same vacation locations and live in the same neighborhoods. It's because they've learned to hang around with other people that are successful. And so you don't want your rookies or your low producers hanging around together, because misery loves company. And if you're trying to raise the standards in your business and you want to bring out the best in your people, your lowest producers should not be complaining to each other, wallowing in the negativity of how they feel about things. You need to partner them up with the people that are doing very good in your business and show them how it benefits them. They're not going to do it, remember, for your reasons or because you tell them to do it. Let them know how it can help them attain those goals that are posted by their desks. And I go back to the beginning of this program. Every one of you, if your people don't have 10 non-negotiable goals posted, written, dated, with action items by their phones, that's the first thing you have to do when you get off this program today. Because if they don't know where they're going, they're not going to get there, and you're not going to get the best out of them because you don't know what reasons will really motivate them. Rule number 6 is recognition. And I think this is something that's really tough on business owners, because business owners, we don't have people that say, gee, great job, and give you a pat on the back. But you know what? Your people need that. You've got to recognize and applaud achievements, both big and small. You can't just recognize your top producers. If you run contests and your top producer wins every contest, you've demotivated everybody else that works for you. You know, and say that you did training on marketing a candidate, that your people are not marketing candidates enough, and you decide to do some training on how do you really market a candidate, how do you really write a grabber, how do you really get there, you know, and why is that the best way to land new clients. And then you hear somebody really making some good calls and attempting to market their candidate the very next day. Your desk drawer should be filled with gift certificates, or, you know, it could be something as simple as a Starbucks certificate, or, you know, a certificate to a theater by you, or a restaurant. It's nice if you've got people that have families where the reward involves the whole family, because if they start getting these little bonuses and then they stop, their family's going to ask them, well, you know, how come you're not getting those little gifts anymore? So it doesn't have to be a major contest. It could be $20 towards something. But if you start recognizing effort, especially if it's an effort where you're doing training, you would be amazed how that motivates people. And again, the contest should be focused on what's important to everybody. It can't be that you only recognize your top producers. You know, try to come up with things that everybody can win. Rule number 7, and of course, as a trainer, I would you know, not be doing proper training for you if I didn't talk about consistent repetitive training. I just got back from an employment conference in San Diego that was attended by Fortune 100 to 500 companies from all over the world. It was probably one of the more amazing conferences I've ever been at. And it was interesting because, you know, you had all the C-suite people, the CEOs and the CIOs, but you had all the talent acquisition people at this conference. And when they were talking about retention and they were talking about attracting people and engaging employees, what they kept saying over and over again was they had to put more money toward training programs. And the training that works is consistent and repetitive. And so when you look at your training program, are you consistent? You can't be sending your people to a training program here and a training program there where they're hearing different things from different people and they don't know how you want things done. You know, if you want people to change their habits, then you've got to teach them exactly what you want, and you have to be very consistent, because only then will your office become a lean, mean sales machine. And I think the reason you want to bring out your best in people is you realize as an owner or a manager, your job is to make a profit. See, your job is not to provide jobs for the people that work for you. I think many owners get stuck in that. We're so worried about the people that work for us, and we even keep people on board that are not making money for us. But I can tell you from 2009 to 2011, I interviewed so many people that went out of business, and one of the biggest things they did was they held on to non-producers way too long. You know, and they also did not have the time to train, or they didn't have training programs in place that could anticipate trends and keep them abreast of what's going on. Now, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, Barb, business is great right now. We're focused on production. We don't have time to train. If you don't have time to train, you don't have a consistent training program, you think it's too costly for you to train, and in most instances it is. I remember not hiring in spring and fall because that's when I spoke at conferences and I did all my own training in my office, and I wouldn't hire. I could have a high achiever, you know, basically land on my desk, and I wouldn't even interview them in spring and fall because I knew I didn't have time to train them. You know, or do you pay for off-site training and you don't get measurable return on your investment? Too often when people go to conferences or they do, you know, they're gone for a day, they come back, they've had information overload. And I learned from the National Speakers Association that people retain 5% of what they've learned at a conference up to 2 weeks' time. And then after that, they retain less than 1%, and almost everybody doesn't implement one idea. They go back to their old ways of doing things. And so if, in fact, you don't have a training program, of course, you know I'm going to do a little bit of promoting on this call, and this will be the only promotion I do. We do have a training program called the Top Producer Tutor. And you can see that, you know, we do live calls, we do coaching, we test them to make sure they're retaining the information, and this is consistent, repetitive training. And when I send you a recording of this call, you're going to get a recording of this training today. I'm going to send you a demo link with it. And I really challenge each one of you to listen to that, because it can make all the difference in the world of how you train your people. It can take training off your desk where you can focus on the other 11 ideas I'm giving you today. Let's go to rule number 8 now. Combine positive and negative feedback. When you do need to, and then discuss needed improvement. People are much more receptive if you compliment them at first. And you say, I really appreciate the fact that you've done this and you've done that and you've done this. Now an area that I think we need some work on, if you make me feel good about myself, I'm probably going to listen to you. Because when I work for you, I would love to say that I really care about you as my owner. And I kept thinking that for many, many years. I was like, God, the people that work for me, they're like my family. I just love them, and I'm going to do everything I can. And then I realized as an owner, wow, I had to protect myself, and I had to view all my sales team as temporaries because probably someday they were going to leave me, and did I protect myself? That's why I do a lot of sessions for owners and managers, just teaching them how to protect themselves and their business if somebody does leave. But you're going to retain your people if, in fact, when you provide constructive criticisms, you make me feel good about myself. Because when you're talking to me and you're my owner, all I'm thinking about is what's in it for me. I care about me more than I care about you as my owner or manager, because that's just how we're wired as human beings. And so when you are giving, or you are giving some feedback, you're trying to help them learn. And by the way, the worst thing you could do is not give feedback. If something's not going right, the way you show you care is by giving feedback and showing your people what they need to change. The answer is never make more calls. That drives me crazy when I hear an owner say, well, if they just make more phone calls. If somebody's making bad calls and they're not landing new clients and you need new clients, the answer is not make more calls. It's teaching them how to make marketing calls. It's giving them the 7 or 8 ways that they can do marketing now that are very unique. It's giving them scripts they can follow. It's not saying make more calls, because if I'm making a bad call and I make 100 more of the bad calls, I'm still not going to get results. If you're not filling all your orders, look at all the orders that you write. I never worry about the orders that we fill. I worry about the orders and assignments and contracts that we don't fill. And if you're not filling them, maybe your people just are not making the right recruiting calls. Are they identifying a new source for talent every month? Because that's what they should be doing. They can't keep using the same sources. And employers, when I was at that corporate conference last month in San Diego, I can tell you they were talking a lot about third-party recruiters. And the one thing I was hearing from every corporate person there, and I was the only one from our profession on their program. Everybody else was corporate America. And the one thing they kept saying to me is, you've got to tell people in your profession, we don't want the same candidates we can find on our own from job boards. You're a recruiter. You're supposed to find us people we can't find. And that was loud and clear. So this positive feedback that you're giving them, first, then you want to show them where they need to improve so you can represent the best talent faster than your competition. Because right now with the internet and with as fast as things move, we've got to work not only better but faster than our competition. Rule number 9 is really collaborate. Individuals on the recruiting side of the process should provide a minimum of 3 job order leads to the individuals responsible for client development daily. I don't understand why often, especially if you're doing temp or contracts, so often the inside team, can't stand the outside salespeople, and the outside salespeople are mad at the inside team because they're not filling the orders, and the inside team is going, well, if you'd bring us orders that represent the candidates we're representing, we could fill them. And there's this real breakdown in the relationship, where most of your client development leads, once you do revenue modeling and you tell everybody in your organization the type of business you want them to generate for you, then both people on the recruiting side as well as the client development side of the sale need to work together and help each other. When you're interviewing candidates, there are 6 or 7 things you can do to generate job order leads from every single person you interview, every single person. Plus you're getting inside information on all the companies they worked for. So who better to give leads to the client development people than your recruiters? And yet so often this process is not set up. And again, people on the client development side, they've got to know your best business so that they can spend 85% of their time targeting that exact business. And if they do, that's going to be the easiest to fill business for the people that are doing recruiting. And so collaboration is something that really needs to be improved in almost every temp and contract firm that I've done consulting for, that I've done training for. This seems to be the biggest breakdown in most firms. And you can really, it's amazing the results you can get if you really put a premium on collaboration. And you can even bonus these leads. There's a lot of things you can do as an owner or manager, but collaboration, this can't be like this adversarial relationship where the inside team can't stand the outside team and the outside team can't stand the inside team. And there has to be a respect for the person that's at the front desk. I had somebody ask me, I did a coaching call yesterday. I do coaching calls every other week, and I was on a coaching call, and I had a recruiter get on the phone yesterday and say, why are receptionists so stupid? And the front desk person, I mean, it's just ridiculous, and they just don't know what they're doing, and on and on and on. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, if you've got people that are on your sales team and they're not being decent to your front desk person, that front desk person can only be beat up so much, before they quit or before they stop doing a good job for you. So this collaboration has to go throughout your whole entire business, from your receptionist to your sales team to your accounting people and to yourself as the owner or the manager. Collaboration has to be, something that everybody realizes is one of the core values of your business, that everybody has to work together. Rule number 10 is you have to anticipate storms. Think about this. We hired type A people that are very competitive, and then when things happen, and most of the disagreements and conflicts are ownership of job orders or clients, ownership of candidates. I mean, every time I have an owner come on a coaching call and they want to ask me a question about that there's a conflict in their office, almost always it's about who owns the candidate, who owns the client, for how long, what's the criteria. If you don't have this in writing, then you're asking for trouble. And there will be a tendency, and we can't help ourselves. If I have one of my top producers walk in with a rookie, and the rookie is saying the top producer is doing this and that and this and that, and this is a rookie who hasn't produced a dime for me, and they're going up against a big biller in my office that maybe is giving me $500,000 in GMP or in direct placement, as an owner, I'm going to almost have a tendency to want to side with the big biller. But I can't do that, can I? Because now I'm not being consistent, and I'm sending the message that I don't really manage consistently. It depends on how much money you're making me. Or if I had an employee handbook and I had these types of things spelled out, then most of the storms are handled already. They're handled because it's in the employee handbook. And I've had situations in my office where even with an employee handbook, I've had, 2 recruiters fighting over a client or fighting over something, and I will put them in an office and say, you've got 3 minutes to work this out, and when I come in, I want to hear what the 2 of you have solved. I want to hear your solution. And if I go in and there's no solution, I give the account to somebody else that's not even in that room, and they both just stare at me and go, what did you just do? I said, you both lost it, because you don't have really, you're not thinking about the client. We have to put our clients first here, and because the 2 of you couldn't agree, neither of you deserve the client. I'm giving it to somebody else. And that's why in my organization, everybody knows if there's a conflict, you've got 3 minutes to work it out, and if you don't, it's being given away to somebody else in the office. So guess what? Things are handled. But as an owner or manager, people have to be able to know what you're going to do. You can't handle things differently. That consistency is critical to your success. It's just absolutely critical that people can predict what you're going to do as the owner. Rule number 11, and this can be tough at times, is you've got to maintain your own motivation. No matter what is happening, you must be the most motivated and positive person in the office. And, I try to teach everybody that when you walk in an office, all your personal problems, your bills, your family, all the stuff that drives you crazy, you've got to envision a suitcase outside of the office, and you dump them all in the suitcase, and you walk in your office. Because if you drag all that baggage in the office with you, you can't perform at peak performance, because you've got all this baggage you're surrounding yourself. And when you leave your office, you take all the baggage from work, all the craziness of the candidates and clients and coworkers and all the disappointments of the day, and throw them in a suitcase, because you don't want to expose your family to this. But see, your people are going to judge you on what you do more than what you say. I think talk is cheap. And people talk too much. I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but people don't have barriers right now. They don't realize what's appropriate and what's not. People just talk too much. Sometimes I wish clients and candidates talked a whole lot less. And I'm sure when you're interviewing candidates, you're realizing that people don't understand what's appropriate and what's not. But your people are going to judge you on what you do more than what you say. You can't say something, you can't request something and then never check it. If you require that I keep my stats, then you have to react to them, or guess what? I'm going to stop doing it. But no matter what is going on in your life, if I work for you and I sense that you're frustrated, I sense that you're scared, believe me, that'll permeate your whole organization. You can't motivate somebody else that doesn't want to be motivated. All you can do as an owner or a manager is create a motivating environment, give people the tools they need, and create a motivating environment, but it's their job to motivate themselves. I just had a recruiter ask me this a couple weeks ago on one of our coaching calls, and it was like, my owner's not motivating me, and we're all frustrated, and I know my owner's frustrated too. And when I said on the phone, it's not your owner's job to motivate you, the recruiter came right back at me and said, well, I think it is. And I said, but if you don't want to be motivated, can they really motivate you? And he finally admitted, well, no. And think about when you've tried to motivate a child, or another individual, it has to come from within that individual. And that's why if you do what I said at the beginning of this program, and you know everybody's goals, and you see their action items, and you help them do that, believe me, they're going to get to a whole new level of production for you. You will bring out the best in them because now they're doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for you. Which brings me to our last rule of bringing out the best in people. You've got to study your employees' needs. Everybody's different. This is the most important rule for you to master. And customize your contest, to help them achieve their dreams. And follow the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid. I met a gentleman in Dallas recently, and he was very frustrated because he had thrown out $4,000 that his team could have earned, and it was playing Texas Hold'em. And every time you booked a send out, you got a card from a deck of cards. And every time you interviewed, you got a card. And then at the end of the week, whoever had the best hand in Texas Hold'em won the weekly contest. And then the weekly winners could, all were entered in this thing for the end of the month. Well, number one, the contest took a month. And everybody was very confused by what do you get a card for and what do you do this? And I asked him, I said, do all the people, that work for you know how to play Texas Hold'em? And he goes, well, doesn't everybody know? And that's when I admitted to him, I said, I am not a card player. I have no clue how to play Texas Hold'em. And I lived in Dallas for 5 years. So I suppose having lived there, maybe I should have learned how to play Texas Hold'em. And he goes, my God, I never thought about that. And they did seem very confused, like they were asking their coworkers, did I win or lose? And I said, so you didn't keep the contest simple enough. I learned in my group, if I need job order flow, I will say, okay, anybody that writes a job order this week that has interviewing times and a target date to fill, and we book a send out on the job order that you wrote by Friday, then you could leave Friday at 3 o'clock. Or anybody that writes an order, then lunch is on me Friday. Food, time off, it doesn't have to be necessarily money all the time. If you've got parents that are working for you, so often time off is more valuable to them than any money, any contest you're going to run. And so you want to keep it simple. But I used to have an office of young, ambitious, basically, people that were just single and out there trying to kill the world. And what they wanted was they wanted to go places. And anytime we hit our goals, they could pick any restaurant in Chicago. We'd go out to dinner, we'd go out for drinks. I'd get them all hotel rooms where they'd spend the night at a hotel and that. And it was interesting, as they all started mature and they started having kids and getting married and doing all these things, they didn't want to go out for those social events. They didn't want to do things necessarily as a group with their coworkers. They wanted time off. They wanted more time with their kids. They wanted, if I could pay 50% of their daycare, 100% of their daycare 1 month, that meant a whole lot more to them than anything else I could have done. So you've got to know what's important to each employee. And if you employ different age brackets, different things are more important to different generations. If I'm really young, I might want to be, sent someplace after work and party with my coworkers. If I've got a small child or I'm a new parent, I want to get home. I'm sleep deprived. And so that's why contests have to be customized if you want to bring out the best in them. Plus, it shows me that you care about me because I realize that you're trying to customize the contest over what's important to me. I guarantee everybody on this phone, if you follow these 12 rules, you will get greater results because your employees will be attaining their dreams. It goes back to the old Zig Ziglar saying that if you help other people attain their dreams, you'll attain yours. You never want to allow your employees or yourself to be less than your dreams. When you opened your business, what did you envision? And now when you look at your business, is it what you envisioned? If it's less, if there's a gap between what you feel you deserve and where you're at, then you've got to make some changes. And, what we will do is we're going to record this program, and we're going to send everybody that registered for this program the handout, as well as the recording of this program. And also included will be a link to my training program, because I will tell you, that if you don't have structured training, you are not going to keep your people, and you're not going to be able, like Governor Huckabee, to basically anticipate the curves in the road, because believe me, technology will keep throwing changes at us faster than we've ever been able to imagine in the past as we go forward. What I want to do now, because we have a lot of people on these lines, is I want to answer any questions you may have. You're all on the line. We're doing this call free. Anybody that would like to ask me a question that's important to you, and I don't care what the question is about. It can be about anything that you want, and you can ask me questions one of two ways. When you look at the control panel to the right, you see the attendee list. Now, when you dialed in, you were given a phone number, an access code, and a PIN number. If you put that third number in, that PIN number, it's a 2 to 4 digit number, then you could actually go to the attendee list to find your name and then just click on that little yellow hand there, and I can unmute your lines and you and I can talk, and I'll answer any question you have. Or you can go down to the bottom of the control panel and see the word questions. If you click on that plus sign, it opens a dialog box, and you can type your questions in there. And again, I always like to limit these calls to an hour, because most people set aside an hour, and so we do have some time left where I can answer some questions for you. So any questions you may have, I'll be glad to answer at this point. Let me go up on top first and see if I see any hands being raised. I don't see hands, but I do see question marks down below. Barb, if I have someone who has worked for me for 5 years and is just not producing, what do I do because they were a top producer in the past? I've been writing this out for more than a year. What I would say to you is the key here is that they were a top producer. They're not currently a top producer for you. So you've got to look at how much money you've invested in this person. And what I would do, this person could have quit and stayed. They might be sitting there wondering why you're still paying them. What you have to do is meet with this person. I hope you're all doing performance reviews with your sales team. And you've got to meet with this person and put them on probation and say, I can't afford this any longer. I'm in business to make a profit. I'm sure you understand that. I appreciate what you've done in the past, but things are not working now. Let's discuss the changes you need to make. And then give this person a plan. When you put somebody on probation, you have to have a plan, and every evening you meet with them to make sure that they're on plan and that they're on target. Because if you start micromanaging somebody where they have to start achieving, they might quit because they might have quit and stayed anyway, or you could turn them around. So I would put the person on probation with a plan, and it's not 90 days probation and 120 days. It's indefinite probation until we see a change. That means you can let them go whenever you want to. But you have to give them a plan of action. Give them some solutions. Remember, the solution is never make more calls. It's looking at what they're doing. It's tweaking the way they're making their recruiting call. Maybe their prep and debrief is not good. Maybe they're not prepping clients. Well, we absolutely have to prep clients. Maybe they're still trying to control clients and candidates. You can't control candidates and clients. Not in this marketplace. You can develop rapport, but you can't control them. Maybe they don't know how to do that. Maybe they don't know how to overcome the top 20 objections. Your people should know the top 10 candidate objections and the top 10 client objections and have 4 or 5 responses to every one of them. If your people are not taking 3 objections with every call they make, they're making customer service calls. They're not making sales calls anymore. And that could be costing you a ton of money and costing them a lot of production. And so a lot of it is determining where they're weak and then giving them the training they need, showing them exactly what they need to do to turn it around. Let's see. Here's another question. I find that my recruiters do give a tremendous amount of free consulting. How do I stop that? I think you need to create a resource for the people you don't place. And because understand something, most people that are in our business are social workers who like money. Most recruiters are social workers who like money. If they weren't recruiters, they would be doing something else to help people. Most owners that are in our business are just good people. They want to help people. They want to make a mark. That's probably who most of you are. But our recruiters love to give free advice and free consulting because those incoming calls can take up a lot of time. It makes them feel good about themselves because, and I used to be guilty of doing that. I used to do free resumes, especially when my clients would refer their children or their friends, and these are good clients referring them. And then I realized how much time I was spending a day. The average recruiter right now, when we did surveys, spends over an hour a day giving free advice to the 95% of the candidates you're not going to place. So you have to develop a resource for them. And obviously we've got a career portal that we send people to that we do market as well. If you don't have a resource for these candidates and you'd like to see a resource that we developed, we also have something that you can provide to these candidates. But if you're not interested in what we've done, develop something where you can give these people something to do. If you give them something to do, they stop calling your office. If you give them free advice, they'll keep calling you because now you're their free career consultant. Now you're their absolute free career consultant. Okay, I see no more, let's see, no more questions down below. Let me go up on top and see if I see any hands being raised. Again, this is like one-on-one free consulting, everybody. If anybody else would like to ask me a question, I'd be more than glad to answer it. And if you don't want me to use your name, I always use a first name. You could just type in anonymous, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. Okay, I see no hands. Let me go down below. I see no additional questions, so I do thank all of you for joining me. I hope this information helps you. I hope you're all having a record year, and remember, go back, take what wasn't done in the first 4 months of this year and add it on to the last 8 months. It's way too early in the year for you to give up your dreams or for your people to give up their dreams, because the market is very strong right now. Coast to coast, it is very strong right now, and if you're not experiencing that, then you've got to make some changes. If any of you would like a live demo rather than wait for that link, if you call the number in front of you, we can actually arrange a one-on-one live demo for you and give you access to our training program if you would like to see that. So again, if you want a live demo, just call the number in front of you. And I appreciate all of your time joining us today, and I hope that these ideas make money for you. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.